Every shape that you draw with a shape tool in Illustrator can have two properties, a stroke and a fill. Understanding how to apply these properties and adjust them as needed is a crucial skill to understand. Let's explore how this works. I'm beginning this video with the strokefill.ai file already open on my computer. And this particular file has a couple of different shapes that I can use to demonstrate the idea of the stroke and fill properties. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this round circle in the background of this icon here. And I'm just going to select that. And the way that we can tell what properties are currently applied to this is by coming down here at the bottom of the Tools panel and looking at the fill and stroke icons. Now we can see that with this shape selected, that this object has a fill color of brown and a stroke color of none. Now you can also see these up here in your control panel. You can see the fill is located here and the stroke is located here. Now one last place you'll see this is if you come up to the panel dock and click on the color button, you'll also see the fill and stroke colors indicated here as well. Now for this video I'm going to focus on this area down here because I think it's a little bit easier to see than the other options. Now, there's a couple of things to understand as well. So, in order to apply a color to a particular property of an object, you need to have the icon frontmost. So, for example, if I click on the stroke indicator, it's going to bring it in front of the fill indicator. Now, with that stroke icon frontmost, I can come over here to the swatches panel, and I can pick a color if I choose to. So maybe I'll choose a light brown. And although it's a little bit hard to see here, we now have a light brown stroke applied to this object. Let's go to the stroke panel and just increase the weight of the stroke to make it a little bit easier to see. Now, if I wanted to then change the fill color of the object, I would need to click on the fill indicator to bring it frontmost, and then any change I make from a color perspective is going to apply to the fill of that object. Now, in addition, as you're working in Illustrator, there may be times when you accidentally apply a fill color instead of a stroke or vice versa. So, in cases like that, I can swap the stroke and fill colors by clicking on this icon right here. So, if I click on that icon, you'll see that I swap the current stroke and fill colors. You can do this with a keyboard shortcut by pressing Shift-X on your keyboard, and that'll achieve the same result. Now, in the event that I don't want one of these properties applied, for example, in this case, the stroke color, what I can do is make the stroke frontmost, and I can do that as well by simply pressing the X key on my keyboard. Pressing the X key toggles between having the fill in front or the stroke in front. So right now with the stroke in front, I can come over here to the swatches panel and I can click on the none swatch right here. I can also apply the none swatch right down here at the bottom of the tools panel. So when I click none, it's going to remove the stroke from the current object. Now if I wanted to change the fill color, I would just need to bring the fill color frontmost. And then in my swatches panel, I can go ahead and choose the appropriate swatch to bring it back to its original color. You can also apply a default fill and stroke color by clicking on this icon right here, and that's going to set it to the default stroke and fill of a fill of white and a stroke of black. Now, if you want to do that using a keyboard shortcut, I'm just going to undo that for a second. You can simply press the letter D on your keyboard, and that will also apply the default stroke and fill color for this object. So if I wanted to get rid of the stroke on this object, in this case I could press the X key on my keyboard to swap the stroke and fill color, and a shortcut for applying none is by pressing the / key on your keyboard. You'll notice that that mimics this diagonal slash found in the none swatch. And you'll even see the tooltip show up when I hover over it, indicating that the shortcut for the none swatch is the /. Now I'll press X again to bring the fill color to the front, and I'll go ahead and apply the brown swatch back to that shape. Now, the stroke and fill properties also apply to text as well. And one of the improvements that has been made in the current version of Illustrator is how the stroke and fill properties behave when adjusting text. So for example, I'm going to click off of anything, and I'm going to bring the stroke indicator frontmost. Now, in previous versions of Illustrator, if I would have selected some text at this point, the stroke would have remained the focused area. And so it was very easy to accidentally apply a stroke to text, which you often don't want to do, although you may do occasionally. And so what you'll find in the current version of Illustrator is that using my selection tool, if I double click on this text to switch to the type tool and focus on that text, you'll notice that the fill indicator is automatically brought to the front so that I can avoid accidentally applying a stroke to my text. But you'll notice when I select this text, it's indicating that the color of the text is currently black and the stroke is none. I can, in fact, apply a stroke to this object, but you can very easily make text unreadable that way as well. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the stroke from this text, and then maybe I'll set the fill color to the brown swatch as well. And so now to get out of there, I can simply press the Escape key on my keyboard to make the selection tool the active tool and get out of editing the text. As you can see, these properties are not difficult to use once you understand how they work. Knowing some of the tricks to adjusting these properties will help you to avoid common stumbling blocks as you work with the stroke and fill properties.